gentlemen, spring storylines, little thin right now, but there are some games that are still happening. So, I'll kind of turn this over to you. Direct this where you want. Let's dive in.
Yeah, so I think the big thing on the spring storylines right now really just comes down to quarterback battles. It's really the only thing that people write about at a national level right now, anyways. If you want the different details about, the third string defensive end who's flashing and camp, we're not the place for that right now. We'll talk about those players when they become a little bit more relevant in the fall and we start to know how the roster and the two deep is going to shape up. But the big thing that we were noticing going through some of these storylines is just the fact that a lot of the teams that you're traditionally looking at as good, or even last year, who had big seasons, turning over a lot at quarterback, and I think that that's a big thing that we should really talk about is we're looking at Ohio State with a quarterback battle, Bama has a quarterback battle. TCU's turning over their quarterback. Not really a battle at the moment. I think Chandler Morris is pretty much the guy right now at TCU. It's kind of a come take the job if you can. And then Michigan, not necessarily a quarterback battle, but just nothing behind a young JJ McCarthy. And so starting to look at some of these teams where we have a lot of maybe traditional success or at least success last year, and you're starting to look at this and say, man, some of these teams really got to figure out what they're doing at quarterback, or else we're going to see kind of a new wave of players coming up, a new wave of teams coming up to compete. Georgia, another one with the quarterback battle, losing Stetson Bennett and, have to figure out what's going to come next for them. So really going to be interesting to see how some of these quarterback battles shape up as the spring goes along and as we get into next season to see how these different teams are going to shake out.
Yeah, really, it's JJ McCarthy at Michigan and Caleb Williams at USC from the 2022 playoff contenders that are actually returning. So everybody else, it's pretty wide open. I think we have some penciled in guys. Like I know Carson Beck is pretty much signed, sealed, delivered at Georgia. That could get interesting if some things don't work out. But I think we're pretty confident in that pick. But I think Alabama's wide open. Ohio State, it's probably Kyle McCord, but Devin Brown's in the mix too. There's some legit question marks. And like you said, Michigan, McCarthy was not. I know he won the battle last year from Cade McNamara and forced Cade McNamara to transfer, but I don't think any Michigan fan that's honest would say McCarthy was perfect last year. Like he left some things to be desired, and the lack of depth that they saw, especially in that spring game that Garrett mentioned, was a little bit concerning. So lots of wide open things. If you thought 2022 was a little chaotic, the beginning of the 2023 season could be a lot of interesting results as these quarterback kinks get worked out.
Well, I think the most interesting quarterback situation to me comes down to two schools. It's Alabama and it's Ohio State, right? Because both of those programs are always expected to compete for national championships. But I think a lot of people just take it for granted that, oh, well, those schools will reload. They've always reloaded. Let's be honest, like Nick Saban that's probably why he's the greatest college coach of all time, is because he's made the reloading process look so seamless when in reality it's just not. All right? I mean, you have to have the level of play, the consistency year in and year out, really since 2008, the year after Saban took over. It's a miracle. I mean, it's video game-esque, right? Where the ratings are just kind of created in a dome, and then you have that player go out and play according to his ratings. He's made the quarterback and well, running back turnover before they kind of adopted the new style of offense look just so incredibly easy. This year is kind of the first year in a while that I feel like both of those schools don't. I don't know that their fan bases can look you in the eye and say, yeah, we feel really good about where we are right now. Because you look up at Ohio State, Kyle McCord, highly touted 5-star, but has never seized the reins up there in Columbus, right? He's never really taken the bull by the horns and made a concerted effort to be QB1. He's never really given that coaching staff something to think about when it comes to him. And listen, CJ Stroud, I get it. You're probably not beating him out. But from years past, quarterback competition hasn't even been close, right? There's never been that second thought. At Alabama, we saw what Jalen Milroe did last year, and I wrote about this on the transfer portal CFB, which shout out to our partners over there. They're doing amazing things. got a magazine getting ready to come out. It's going to be a really really exciting summer there. But I wrote about that battle down in Tuscaloosa. Jalen Milrow is just kind of the first quarterback who maybe in next, may have the ascendancy, but doesn't look like kind of the prototypical first round draft pick that we're accustomed to seeing in the saddle for Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide.
Well, and the big thing too that I think of there is you mentioned, okay, Kyle McCord hadn't given him any reason really to choose him over CJ Stroud, and having to figure out if it's not Jalen Milrow, because I don't think that we think that it is. What are they doing there? That's almost the point, right? Is that they've had such clear cut number one guys for so long that you could look at them and say, okay, this guy is probably an NFL draft pick. This guy, or at least is going to be an NFL draft pick by the time he's finished. This guy, he has the talent to do this. He's going to lead our team. He's going to make sure that, he makes all the throws. He knows what he's doing on the field. And there have been guys that are definitively behind him, right? That are just definitely quarterback 2, definitely quarterback 3. Right now, so many of these teams don't have a definite quarterback 1. And that's really the issue, right? It's not the same as just, oh, well, it's a quarterback battle, but you kind of have a feeling this guy's going to win. We have real question marks about, who's going to end up at the top there. And when you look around, yeah, you're right, Mitch. It's been a long time since anyone has really had to go through this at Alabama or Ohio State. You look at some of the names that have gone through there, and you're thinking about, especially at Bama, I think that the last 4 or 5 quarterbacks that have started at Bama are all NFL quarterbacks at this point. It's not to say that guys like Eli Holstein or Ty Simpson or Jalen Milrow, even if he does win, it's not to say they can't go and be that, but just that right now we're not seeing it.
Yeah, and Garrett, we looked it up on a previous podcast that you and I were doing together. Other than injury, 1 or 2 week substitutions, the last time Alabama had a quarterback that is not currently starting in the NFL was 2015. So it's been almost a decade since they've had to deal with something like this and not knowing, for sure what the talent. And Mitch, you mentioned we got a glimpse of Jalen Milrow. I just don't think that I think, yeah. I mean, 10 years ago, he might be this like locked and loaded starter at Alabama because they're fine with running the offense to the running backs and just having a bus driver that can move the chains every now and then with a quarterback. But that's not what Nick Saban and Alabama want anymore. And that's not what, they brought in the change at offensive coordinator. They're not going to want that type of quarterback in my mind. So unless Jalen Milrow has just gone to some QB guru this offseason and really worked, the Johnny Manziel-esque, doing the footwork on the sand in San Diego or whatever. Unless he's been working on that and, really, really improved from what we saw, which is possible. Like, guys do take a big jump from year 1 to year 2, and that was his first legit college action that we saw him in. It's possible that he could take that jump forward, but if he doesn't, then it has to be somebody else. It has to be a guy in Ty Simpson, who we have never seen in a actual, not garbage time role at Alabama, or a true freshman in Eli Holstein or Dylan Lorengen that they are just bringing onto campus this semester. So it's going to be interesting for Alabama. The first time in a long time they've had a question mark at that position. And obviously they're going to have talent around. Obviously that he's going to be throwing to the best wide receivers. He's going to be handing off to the best running backs. But the turnover this year, and we might talk about this a little bit in our hot take section here in just a second, it's going to lead a lot of people to believe that Alabama is not going to even make it to Atlanta for the second year in a row. So if you believe in Alabama, if you believe in Nick Saban, there might be some betting value there. I don't know that they'll be the betting favorite to make it to Atlanta, but yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they deal with all that turnover.
Well, gosh, the one game that we saw Milrow start against A&M, like the box score doesn't look that terrible because he did throw for 3 touchdowns. But if you watch that game, Alabama never felt confident about winning that football game, right? I mean, every time Milrow stepped back, you kind of wondered if something was going to go wrong, and that's just not going to result in a championship level result if he doesn't improve. So, tell you what, Tommy Rees might be under the gun just a little bit. This could be a tough first year assignment if you aren't kind of aware of what's going on around Tuscaloosa. Elsewhere in the state, Auburn also has a quarterback battle going on. TJ Finley, Robbie Ashford. We've talked about that in days past and podcasts past. They have their spring game today. So as you're listening to this, it will have already happened. I'm really curious to see kind of what the reports are there, because it seems like Hugh Freeze is going to try and give TJ Finley every possible chance to win this job, even though it sounds like, if you've listened to us with the Up Tempo podcast, it sounds like the fan base is really kind of hoping for Robbie Ashford to win that battle. So can he take that? I don't know. We'll see.
Gracious him. How about